Have you ever felt like your entire world was collapsing around you? That enemies were closing in from every direction, and there was nowhere left to turn? This was precisely the situation King David found himself in around 1000 BCE, as he penned what we now know as Psalm 70. In the ancient hills of Judea, with the scorching Middle Eastern sun beating down, David, warrior, poet, and king found himself in a predicament that would break most men. Yet in his darkest hour, he turned to something that would echo through the centuries, a simple, urgent prayer of just 5 verses. What makes this particular psalm so compelling? The answer lies in its raw authenticity. Unlike lengthy, eloquent prayers, Psalm 70 is a desperate cry for help, perhaps one of the most urgent prayers in Scripture. It's breathtakingly direct, startlingly honest, and profoundly human. The year was approximately 1010 BCE. The kingdom of Israel was experiencing political turmoil. David, though anointed by the prophet Samuel years earlier, found himself constantly pursued by enemies, both from without and within his kingdom. Historical records from this period suggest numerous rebellions and threats to David's rule. Particularly poignant was Absalom's rebellion around 980 BCE, which may have been the specific context for this psalm. Let's delve into this remarkable prayer, exploring its historical context, linguistic nuances, and timeless relevance that continues to resonate with people facing adversity even today, nearly 3,000 years later. Psalm 70 belongs to a collection known as the Psalms of David, composed between approximately 1020 and 970 BCE during the United Monarchy period of ancient Israel. The Hebrew title, Lamnitzich El David El Hasker, translates to "for the choir director" of David, for remembrance. This specific designation for remembrance appears only in one other psalm, Psalm 38, suggesting that these were particularly intended to remind God of the psalmist's plight. Archaeological findings from the City of David excavations in Jerusalem, dating back to the 10th century BCE, have uncovered evidence of the musical and literary culture that would have surrounded the composition of such works. Fragments of musical instruments and writing implements discovered at these sites offer a window into the world where these words were first penned. Make haste, O God, to deliver me. O Lord, make haste to help me. Let them be put to shame and confusion who seek my life. Let them be turned back and brought to dishonor who delight in my hurt. Let them turn back because of their shame who say, Aha, aha. May all who seek you rejoice and be glad in you. May those who love your salvation say evermore, God is great, but I am poor and needy. Hasten to me, O God. You are my help and my deliverer. O Lord, do not delay. These words echo from a time when life hung in the balance daily. The First Temple period in Jerusalem, dating from approximately 1000 to 586 BCE, was marked by constant threats from surrounding nations like Egypt, Assyria, and Babylon. Within this historical crucible, David's prayer emerged not as a theological treatise but as a survival tool. What makes this psalm particularly striking is its brevity and urgency. In the original Hebrew text, the opening line Chusha translates as make haste or hurry. This urgent appeal appears 3 times in this short prayer, at the beginning, middle, and end, creating a rhythmic desperation that pulses through the entire psalm. The language of Psalm 70 reveals much about the human experience of crisis. The Hebrew syntax employed here features what scholars call jussive forms, strong wishes or commands, reflecting the intensity of David's situation. Professor Robert Alter of Berkeley University, in his 2007 translation of the Psalms, noted that this particular prayer contains one of the highest concentrations of imperative verbs in the Psalter, underscoring its nature as an emergency call to God. Consider the historical pressure David faced. By 1000 BCE, he had unified the tribes of Israel into a kingdom, established Jerusalem as its capital after conquering it from the Jebusites around 1003 BCE, and faced numerous threats from neighboring kingdoms. Archaeological evidence from the Moabite stone, dated to approximately 840 BCE, references the tensions between Israel and surrounding nations during this period, giving us a glimpse into the political climate that formed the backdrop for David's desperate prayers. When David cries, "Let them be put to shame and confusion who seek my life," he's not speaking in abstract terms. Historical records indicate that between 1010 to 970 BCE, he faced at least 7 major rebellions or external threats. The Hebrew term used here for shame is yevishu, which carries connotations beyond mere embarrassment. It implies complete devastation and social disgrace. In ancient Near Eastern culture, where honor was paramount, this was a devastating prayer indeed. Jerusalem in David's time was a city of approximately 12 acres atop what is now called the City of David, just south of the Temple Mount. Archaeological excavations by Eilat Mazar in 2005 uncovered what may have been David's palace, dating to this exact period. Imagine David perhaps composing this urgent prayer within those very walls, as reports of advancing enemies reached his ears. The emotional tenor of the psalm shifts dramatically in verse 4. "May all who seek you rejoice and be glad in you." This sudden pivot from imprecation to celebration reveals a psychological technique still recommended by therapists today, shifting focus from problems to possibilities, from threats to thanksgiving. In the midst of crisis, David demonstrates remarkable emotional resilience, a quality that modern psychological research, such as Dr. Martin Seligman's work on learned optimism published in 1991, has shown to be crucial for survival in extreme circumstances. But what makes this psalm truly universal is its closing confession, "But I am poor and needy." The Hebrew terms used here, ani v'evian, appear together 15 times throughout the Psalter. They describe not just material poverty, but a state of complete dependence. In this confession, King David, a ruler with considerable resources, acknowledges his fundamental vulnerability, a reality that transcends time, culture, and social status. Archaeologist Dr. Amihai Mazar's excavations at Tel Rehav in the Jordan Valley, conducted between 1997 and 2012, revealed fascinating insights into daily life during David's era. The findings suggest that even during this golden age of the United Monarchy, most Israelites lived in basic conditions with constant threats from famine, disease, and warfare. David's confession of being poor and needy would have resonated deeply with his original audience. Throughout human history, crises have been inevitable. The Athenian plague of 430 BCE killed nearly a quarter of the population. The Black Death of the 14th century claimed up to 200 million lives. World War II resulted in approximately 75 million deaths between 1939 and 1945. On personal levels, individuals face health crises, financial ruin, relationship breakdowns, and countless other challenges. What Psalm 70 offers is not a promise of immunity from these realities, but rather a template for response. It presents what theologian Walter Brueggemann, in his 1984 seminal work, The Message of the Psalms, calls a psalm of disorientation, an honest acknowledgement of life's chaos coupled with a determined appeal to divine intervention. Consider how Psalm 70's pattern parallels modern crisis response protocols. First, there's the immediate call for help, verses 1 to 2, equivalent to modern emergency calls. Then comes the assessment of threats, verse 2 to 3, similar to triage in emergency medicine. This is followed by community support activation, verse 4, reminiscent of how crisis counselors emphasize social connection during trauma. Finally, there's the acknowledgement of need and request for specific intervention, verse 5, mirroring how effective help-seeking behavior requires specific requests. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, in his groundbreaking 2014 research on trauma, The Body Keeps the Score, notes that vocalization of distress is a neurologically important step in processing fear. When David cries out, "Make haste," he's engaging neural pathways that help regulate his autonomic nervous system, a scientific reality unknown to him but intuited through his raw human experience. The communal dimension of Psalm 70 shouldn't be overlooked. Though deeply personal, this prayer was designated for the choir director, suggesting it was meant to be performed publicly. Archaeological findings at Megiddo and other Israelite sites have uncovered large public spaces dating to the 10th century BCE that likely served as gathering places for communal worship and lament. This communal aspect reflects what sociologists like Emil Durkheim identified in the late 19th century as collective effervescence, the healing power of shared emotional experience. When modern congregations recite Psalm 70 together, they participate in a tradition of communal processing that spans millennia, connecting them not only with ancient Israel but with countless generations who have found solace in these words. Let's examine the psalm structure more closely. Its 5 verses form a chiastic pattern, a literary technique common in ancient Hebrew poetry where the first element corresponds to the last, the second to the second to last, and so on, with the central element standing alone as the focus. In Psalm 70, this central element is the pivot from lament to praise in verse 4, emphasizing the transformative potential of reaching out to God in crisis. The psalm also contains what biblical scholars identify as formulaic language, phrases that appear elsewhere in Scripture, suggesting they were well-established expressions of faith. The phrase, "Let them be put to shame and confusion," appears almost verbatim in Psalms 35, 40, and 71, indicating this was part of a recognized tradition of imprecation, calling for judgment on enemies. Interestingly, Psalm 70 is almost identical to Psalm 40 verses 13 to 17, raising fascinating questions about composition and compilation. Historical analysis suggests that the Book of Psalms reached its final form during the post-exilic period, between 538 and 332 BCE, long after David's lifetime. This repetition likely represents different liturgical uses of the same prayer, Psalm 40 incorporating these verses as part of a longer reflection, while Psalm 70 extracts them as a standalone emergency prayer. The psychological insight embedded in this psalm is remarkable. It acknowledges what trauma specialists today call perpetrator-induced traumatic stress, the psychological impact of being targeted by hostile others. When David refers to those who say, "Aha, aha," verse 3, he's recognizing the additional pain caused by others' delight in his suffering. In Hebrew, he-ach is an onomatopoeic expression of malicious glee similar to modern bullying behavior. Research published in the Journal of Traumatic Stress in 2019 indicates that social pain activates many of the same neural pathways as physical pain, making social attacks particularly devastating. David's prayer acknowledges this reality while refusing to remain its victim. At its core, Psalm 70 embraces what modern psychologists call stress-related growth, the potential for crisis to catalyze spiritual development. By shifting from lament to praise and from isolation to community, David demonstrates the human capacity for resilience even in extreme circumstances. This resilience isn't unique to religious contexts. Studies conducted after natural disasters, such as the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami in Japan, reveal similar patterns of psychological recovery among survivors who maintained hope and community connections. David's ancient prayer template has been validated by modern research on trauma recovery. The impact of Psalm 70 extends far beyond its original context. Throughout Christian history, it became part of the monastic prayer tradition known as the Divine Office, recited daily in monasteries since at least the 6th century CE when Benedict of Nursia established his rule around 530 CE. In Jewish tradition, it forms part of the Takanan prayers recited on Monday and Thursday mornings. During the Protestant Reformation of the 16th century, the Psalms gained renewed prominence. John Calvin's 1557 commentary on this psalm emphasized how it demonstrated that the door of prayer is open even amidst extreme desperation. The Jeevan Psalter, completed in 1562, set these ancient prayers to music that influenced Protestant worship for centuries to come. The linguistic journey of Psalm 70 is equally fascinating. From its original Hebrew, it was translated into Greek in the Septuagint, around 250 BCE, then into Latin in the Vulgate, late 4th century CE, and subsequently into countless vernacular languages. Each translation faced the challenge of conveying the urgent, raw quality of the original prayer. In English alone, it has undergone numerous translations. The King James Version of 1611 rendered the opening verse as, "Make haste, O God, to deliver me. Make haste to help me, O Lord." The 1989 New Revised Standard Version translated it as, "Be pleased, O God, to deliver me. O Lord, make haste to help me." Each translation reflects not only linguistic choices but theological and cultural perspectives of its time. What makes Psalm 70 particularly relevant today is its unflinching honesty about human experience. In an age where social media often pressures people to present curated, positive versions of their lives, this ancient prayer offers permission for raw authenticity. It acknowledges that crisis, fear, and desperate need are not signs of spiritual failure, but part of the human condition. Consider the global crises of recent decades. The COVID-19 pandemic that began in 2019 claimed millions of lives worldwide. The 2008 financial crisis left countless families economically devastated. Ongoing conflicts in regions like Syria since 2011 and Ukraine, intensifying in 2022, have created massive humanitarian crises. In each of these situations, individuals and communities have faced circumstances that echo David's desperate plea. But Psalm 70 doesn't leave us in despair. Its final petition, "You are my help and my deliverer. O Lord, do not delay," balances honest acknowledgement of need with confident hope. This combination reflects what psychologists call realistic optimism, the ability to face difficult realities while maintaining hope for positive outcomes. Studies conducted at the University of Pennsylvania by Dr. Angela Duckworth, published between 2007 and 2019, demonstrate that this combination of realism and hope, what she terms grit, is one of the strongest predictors of success in challenging circumstances. David's prayer embodies this balanced perspective that modern research confirms is psychologically sound. The geographical setting of this psalm adds another dimension to its meaning. Jerusalem, where David likely composed this prayer, sits at approximately 2,500 feet above sea level, surrounded by wilderness areas that drop dramatically to the Dead Sea 1,400 feet below sea level. Just 15 miles away. This dramatic landscape of mountains and valleys provided a natural metaphor for the emotional extremes expressed in the Psalms. Archaeological excavations at the city of David, conducted between 2005 and 2018, have uncovered evidence of the precarious nature of life in David's Jerusalem, a relatively small settlement vulnerable to attack, with limited water sources and constant need for vigilance. This physical reality mirrors the psychological vulnerability expressed in Psalm 70, transitioned to various scenes of people praying. The practice of urgent prayer seen in Psalm 70 isn't unique to Judeo-Christian traditions. Similar patterns appear across world religions. In Islamic tradition, dua supplication often takes a similarly direct form. Buddhist practitioners recite the Metta-bhavana, loving-kindness meditation, for protection. Hindu devotees may recite the Gayatri mantra in times of danger. Across cultures and millennia, humans have intuited the power of directed sacred language in moments of crisis. Neuroscientific research conducted at the University of Wisconsin-Madison between 2010 and 2018 has demonstrated measurable changes in brain activity during prayer and meditation, particularly in regions associated with stress regulation. When people engage in practices similar to David's urgent prayer, they activate neural pathways that can help modulate fear responses regardless of their specific religious tradition. What might Psalm 70 offer to us today? First, it provides a template for honest communication in crisis. Unlike sanitized religious language that avoids negative emotions, this prayer demonstrates that authentic spiritual expression includes acknowledgement of fear, need, and urgency. Second, it offers historical perspective. Whatever crises we face today, we stand in a long tradition of human resilience. Generations before us have weathered terrible storms and found their way forward. David's kingdom ultimately survived numerous threats and established a legacy that influenced world history for millennia. Third, Psalm 70 reminds us of the importance of community in crisis. Though expressed as an individual prayer, its designation for public use implies a recognition that we weather storms better together. Modern crisis intervention protocols, developed since the 1944 Coconut Grove fire in Boston that claimed 492 lives, consistently emphasize social connection as a key factor in recovery. Research published in the journal Science in 2015 found that social support activates protective physiological mechanisms during stress, literally changing how our bodies respond to threat. When David calls on those who seek God to rejoice and be glad, he's intuitively activating social resources that modern science confirms are crucial for survival. The temporal dimension of Psalm 70 deserves special attention. Its repeated calls for haste, make haste, do not delay, reflect the human experience of crisis time, when seconds feel like hours and help seems unbearably distant. This phenomenon, what psychologists call temporal distortion during trauma, has been documented in numerous studies of emergency situations. According to research published in the Journal of Traumatic Stress in 2017, this distortion of time perception is linked to the release of stress hormones like cortisol, which affect how memory encodes experiences. By voicing his perception of urgency, David is both acknowledging this common trauma response and attempting to align divine intervention with his immediate need. Though we don't know the specific outcome of David's original crisis that prompted this prayer, biblical narratives indicate that he survived numerous threats throughout his approximately 40-year reign from circa 1010 to 970 BCE. Archaeological evidence from his era shows the expansion and flourishing of Jerusalem during this period, suggesting that whatever immediate dangers he faced, his legacy endured. This historical perspective offers hope to modern readers in crisis. While not every dangerous situation resolves ideally, the pattern of human resilience, individuals and communities facing devastation and finding ways forward, repeats throughout history. From the rebuilding of London after the Great Fire of 1666 to the reconstruction of Hiroshima after 1945, human communities have demonstrated remarkable capacity for recovery. Psalm 70 continues to speak across the centuries because it captures something essentially human, our vulnerability and our hope, our fear and our faith. Its brevity makes it accessible in moments when longer prayers feel impossible. Its directness cuts through the tendency toward denial that often characterizes initial crisis response. Modern crisis counselors often note that the first step toward recovery is acknowledging the reality of the situation. David's blunt, "I am poor and needy," represents precisely this kind of honest assessment that creates the possibility of effective response. As we conclude our exploration of this ancient prayer, consider its potential application in your own life. What situations have you faced where words failed and only the most urgent pleas remained? How might the pattern of this psalm, honest acknowledgement followed by confident appeal, offer a template for your own response to crisis? In a world that often demands composure and control, Psalm 70 offers permission for raw authenticity. In a culture that frequently suggests self-sufficiency, it models vulnerable dependence. In an age often characterized by isolation, it invites communal participation in both suffering and joy. The next time you find yourself in a moment of crisis, whether personal, professional, or global, remember this ancient prayer that has accompanied countless individuals through their darkest hours. Its brevity makes it easily memorized. Its urgency makes it instantly relevant. Its hope makes it eternally powerful. Make haste, O God, to deliver me. O Lord, make haste to help me. These words have echoed from a shepherd boy running from lions, a king fleeing enemies, communities facing invasion, individuals confronting illness, and countless other scenarios across 3 millennia. They continue to offer not a guarantee of perfect outcomes, but something perhaps more valuable, a way through the wilderness, a path through pain that acknowledges reality while refusing to surrender hope. In your moments of greatest need, may you find, as David did, both the courage to voice your desperation and the faith to expect a response. For in that honest space between acknowledgement and anticipation, countless generations have discovered resilience, community, and eventually, deliverance. Before you go, I want to personally invite you to be part of our growing community here at Prayer Universe. If this video touched your heart or brought you peace, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a prayer or message that can uplift your spirit. But most importantly, I'd love to hear from you. In the comments below, share just one word or phrase of motivation that this video inspired in you, whether it's hope, gratitude, peace, or something else. Your words matter deeply to us because they help guide the content we create for this channel. Together, let's build a space filled with faith, encouragement, and connection. Thank you for being here, and remember, every prayer counts. See you in the next one.